Thank you. This is Shane Bedingfield coming from Fayetteville, North Carolina, and also known as the Texas Torque Ranch. If you Google me, it'll pop up. Me and Chad Bird, over 950 hits. I am the internet. So let's just put it that way. I ain't no internet mark, but I know how to run the internet. Quite to my liking. I'm on WordPress. I say controversial things on WordPress all the time. I know. But anyway, what it basically comes down to is you got with Ronda Rousey, you got a girl who's made quite a bit of money, who has made really a name for herself by being the first, and the first always takes everything. It doesn't matter if it's movies, the bank, the conference room, or whatever it is. First always wins out a little bit. But now with all the speculation of that she's going to the WWE and plus the movies and all that, but really when it gets right down to it, if you look at it cosmetic-wise, she just doesn't stack up to Tori Wilson, Barbie Blank, some of those other girls. So it's going to really, really come down to her working ability, and if she can get it done. I know, I'm being a bad guy. I'm sorry about that, but that's the way it is. But it's going to take more to get her over. The longer she stays in the UFC, the harder it will be to get her over in the WWE. It's sort of like the Ken Shamrock thing. Ken Shamrock almost let it play out too long. Next thing you know, his marketability went down. Then next thing you know, he's caught in a deal where Vince didn't know what to do with him because, he had him and Steve Blackman at the same time. And Dan Severn had the best attitude out of all of them because he just was there to do his deal and get the hell out. Which is the case, I've talked to some enhancement talent before. I don't even think Bruce Pritchard even acknowledges half the talent that's there whenever he was there half the time. They weren't even played into the cards. So basically, you got a lot going on there, and it's like, I know Bruce ain't there, and I know Pat ain't there anymore, but you got TV people writing stuff that really don't even know what to do with the people they have. WWE just got done signing half the world, took over the Bullet Club logo, and just really the living shits. It's just terrible. So you got a ton of questions following Ronda Rousey with her interest in, and then naturally the whole deal is you got wrestlers who've been around a while do not like it when people come in and really don't pay their dues at their certain genre of wrestling, and it's always rubbed people wrong. It rubbed the Bella twins have rubbed people wrong. Some of the better looking divas, Stacy Keibler and all them, they catch heat whenever they even try doing something outside the business. I don't know what Don Tony was thinking on the whole Bobby Blank thing, but that's him, and he tried being a mark for himself and all that, and that never gets anywhere. When I was in Memphis, I seen some crazy stuff. I seen people claiming to be people that were like big names in the territory and the WWF at the time, working for Vince Sr. that weren't even them. One of the Moondogs who died by the name of Lonnie, a guy was walking around there who looked close to him, was claiming that he was one of the Moondogs, and then you got a guy who wrestled, a fairly big name in Memphis who wrestled by the Dream Machine. And he's dead, and you had a guy walking around Memphis claiming that he was the Dream Machine. And so it's just the wrestling business is crazy as far as that. Name dropping is real bad for anybody that even does it in the business. It's bad enough whenever you come in here and you're trying to do something halfway honest with some integrity. Like I say, Ronda will try doing. You can't question her integrity or her honesty. But I just feel sorry for her because she may come real close in. She may, how should I phrase this? She's going to be a possible real high-paid job girl when it comes down to it. I mean, look, if the WWE jobbed out basically Mark Henry for a year and some time, I know that's pretty controversial. But what you have there is a ton of talent probably getting wasted. And Ronda could probably do a lot of her matches without high spots, and which will be sort of unheard of in this day of era, because the high spot is so relied on to get people over. I mean, it goes on. The old saying about giving the people what they want. I mean, I've been in Tennessee and I've watched matches on the monitor before I went out where people didn't do a high spot, and I did a high spot because it would come across different. And but that's my take on the whole high spot thing. It's I've heard it said to several old school heels that come across in your stick doing stuff way different than everybody else, and that's how you will get over. It's not so much going with the grain. Sometimes you got to go against the grain to get yourself over, which I've never had a problem with. I mean, I wrestled as a rodeo clown gimmick on the spur of the moment one time. Actually put the gimmick together on the way to Berlin, New Mexico, just because because Chris Romero asked me to do it, and two, I thought it'd come across different, and at that time we didn't know which direction to go, so I did it and didn't ask questions about it. Paid for it, the gimmick along the way, and did the makeup the best I could at the time. But I mean, sometimes different is good, but you always got to be real careful on how you position yourself in the business. Luckily then I was wrestling semi-main event, and I was protected when I went to New Mexico because of the guy who was training me was wrestling the main event, and it just worked out. We got paid, which is better than what I can say in some parts of the South. Because in the South, I could do a whole show on indies who do not pay, and they don't pay because they haven't marketed any at all, and they just think word of mouth is going to bring people in, and it's crazy. It's just that part of the business in the South is the living shits. There's just no way around it, and it's just terrible. But anyway, to get back to Ronda, it's just even though she's Judo Jean LaBelle's niece, I believe, if I'm right, it's going to be a tough road, and then you always got the dissension in the locker room, and in locker rooms all over the country, it don't matter what stigma or what you could bring to the table to a certain company, there's always going to be heat, especially whenever you're propelled up, and it's just the way it is. It's just the nature of the beast. I mean, I know, spoiler alert. But anyway, it's just the way it is, and there's nothing you can really do about it, and you have to be willing to take your lumps, and the wrestling business has lost money over more locker rooms not going along with the big plan for companies than ever before in the time of the industry. I'm talking Ring of Honor, TNA, Lucha Underground, WWE, Mid-Atlantic, CIWF, over in the other side of North Carolina. I mean, I won't say House of Hardcore yet because I don't know much about the company. You don't ever hear much about dissension amongst the company owners or anything. And GWF's sort of just basically trying to get themselves going sort of thing. And in the wrestling business, it takes a lot for it all to come together. You got to have marketing, you got to have workers, you got to have talent, you got to have announcers. And on top of that, location is the biggest deal of it all, because you cannot be wrestling somewhere out in bum-ass Egypt and expecting to have a crowd, and it's just, there's just so much that has to go on for it, and making a $3,000 house, it just takes a lot, and there's just no other way around it. And nowadays with the internet, in a way I'm grateful for the internet because it helped get me over a little bit in the South. In other parts of the country, I know people have heard of me, but I mean, at the same time, a lot of the old school boys are right. It has hurt the business because things get leaked out that shouldn't be getting leaked out, and then you got Meltzer and all the stuff he has, and he may be possible. What makes Meltzer so good and bad is he can post stuff in advance and have accredited people giving him information and data where it is legit. It almost, it's like there's a leak in the WWE or Impact office or the Ring of Honor office, and he knows about it in advance. He knows which direction they're going, and I don't know. That's his deal. Some people say he's a con artist, and, trying to do everything he can to make a buck. I know that was revolutionary. But that's what it comes down to. It takes a lot to keep the industry going. Back in the 80s, the oil field literally shut down Bill Watts. And my brother, I'm from the oil field. My brother's from the oil field. I watched my brother go from working in a real high-class job, rolling around in a brand new Cadillac when the Eldorado was out, to working in a park, working for the Park and Recreation Division of the city of Amarillo. That's how much it affected that whole area, and that was basically the UWF territory whenever the oil field went belly up. And this will kill you. I was living in Louisiana when the oil field was doing really good before Katrina, and there wasn't a wrestling show anywhere except Monroe, Louisiana, which for me was Plymouth Cross State because I was residing in Lafayette, Louisiana. And the way I basically worked out was I wrestled with some of the oil field guys when we were working at the shop from being in from offshore. And it just, I know I'm going off on a tangent, and we've just barely covered Ronda Rousey, and we're halfway through the show, but there's just a lot that can be said about the Ronda Rousey deal, and it brings out almost every side of the business by bringing her in. They're wanting to bring her in because it'll bring the mainstream media, the higher class media along with her. That's how come they're wanting to bring her in and keep her in for a while. They almost need her worse than she's going to need them. possibly. I ain't saying that completely yet. I'm not taking that to the bank yet, but they're going to need her, especially if it keeps on going like it is going. WWE's probably had their most injuries, which goes back to the ECW thing, because ECW, you still see that smear on the business that ECW's made over the years. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you, I had to calm down a lot. A lot of people said I would try to work in the Japan style, but whenever I wrestled, I got taught as a heel to sort of like come across like Hanson. Now, granted, the most I ever weighed was 5'9". I'm 5'9", 215 whenever I did my first little gig over on the west side of North Carolina. And, wow, there's another notification. But, I mean, it's the style that they're trying to work, because it's the only way they can get over right now is the strong style. And because New Japan's so over right now, it's just the only way they can get over. So, because every time somebody does a spot, they're questioning it. And I've sat there and watched shows with marks that don't know nothing about this industry, and they'll say, oh, they set him back, or they choreographed this match out over months. And no, it doesn't go like that. 90% of the matches that get done, they sort of work out the spots in the house show and house shows, and they know what pops by the time they get to TV or a pay-per-view, and they go off that. It's all feel off that. And there's just no other way around it. That's one. I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due. They're not just going out there choreographing every move, despite what some of the people may have said. The thing that sort of drives me the worst about WWE is you don't got the Harley Race mentality anymore, or the Jack Briscoe mentality, where one guy will wrestle literally everybody in a territory or a couple of territories. That no longer exists as far as the champion. The champion comes in and works against 5 guys, 6 guys the tops. Maybe throw in a couple of younger guys for him to lead them around, or she to lead them around, and that's about it. But literally, it's down to 5 people doing the same, well, not the same match, but they're working together, not in and not out. I know. For exclusive, however you want to word it, that's the way it is. But basically, that is the WWE in a nutshell. Anyway, we're a little bit over halfway through the show, and I'd like to thank my sponsors. I'd like to thank Google Play for providing this app, and I'd like to thank my fingertips and my brain for being smart enough to download this app. Thank you. But when the WWE, whenever you watch a show, you gotta think on how they build a show around the pay-per-views, and one pay-per-view builds upon the next. That is how a WWE year gets put together. So they will leave a match open-ended in one pay-per-view to feed another match. That is how it goes down. You can take it to the bank. And which brings me to Roman Reigns. Now, I know Jim Ross, there's a big deal going around on Twitter that Jim Ross said there's a possible heel turn for Roman Reigns. But my deal on this is, okay, do whatever. The heel turn that could possibly change the business if it's done right is if they will go ahead and turn John Cena heel, it will get over. And it could possibly help the business, but there's a lot that has to be done to it. when they do it, they got to pick the city real well. They got to all the logistics and involving the turn up, even the what time John Cena arrives at the arena will come into play. Because when it goes down, his girlfriend or fiance at the time, Nikki Bella or whoever, cannot talk him out of it. The boys can't talk him out of it. He almost has to show up 5 or 10 minutes before the actual turn goes down. And I would personally do it in Memphis, Tennessee, because that there's where they got such the big pop whenever him and Sting did their little tag team. Plus, wrestling is relevant in Memphis because of Jerry Lawler. Jerry Lawler, on a per capita basis, is more over in Memphis than Ric Flair is in Charlotte or Greensboro, because wrestling is slowly but surely losing its relevancy in the Carolinas because there's just so many federations being ran in so many different places, and the business isn't getting handled right as far as the smaller companies, because they go around saying it's work too much, and whenever you go around saying that, even though Vince did what he did, and everybody, even the old timers who acknowledge what Vince has done, it kills the industry. That's how come the NWA Fan Fest is probably the biggest draw in this territory. And it's just the way it is. And I mean, like, what it basically comes down to is you have how should I word this? You got an industry that's real questionable in the Carolinas. There's always a lot of people always get comped into the shows, and it just don't mean nothing. They don't have this. I mean, like in Tennessee, one of the Moondogs said on one of the rock videos one time that the two roughest places to wrestle in the world is Tennessee and Puerto Rico. And I've never been to Puerto Rico, but friends of mine there, they were down there whenever the whole Brody thing went down. And it's just a different kind of place. And Tennessee sort of handles their business the same way. And that's all there is to it, you know. And, you know, I could sit here and I could talk to you. I could do a whole show over the Goose in North Carolina independent wrestling. I ain't even seen one female promoter who literally turned the soap opera of her life into a backstage storyline, and we're out there doing 21 bell salutes over people we don't even know. The workers don't even know. And it absolutely killed the show. I've seen guys that were introducing shows show up and do some crazy introductions, not even talking about wrestling, and then coming back and saying, well, that crowd's tough. No kidding, that crowd's tough. You just got done killing them off by staying on the mic for almost 15 minutes. And it's just, it's a lot of bad business going on there. And because of that, I just question the integrity of the business. And here. And it doesn't just go on at one place, it goes on all over the place. One of the biggest side jokes I ever heard was up in Marion, North Carolina. I went over there and I heard a guy talk about how tight of a ship he ran. Whenever I wrestled his kid in a tryout workout, handed his kid his ass, and his kid was claiming he was a veteran. Well, hello, I was 42 at the time. And he's claiming he's a 9-year vet, which, by the way, years of experience in the business is one of the biggest loaded questions in the business. If somebody wrestled 100 matches, that's being booked twice a week, 52 weeks a year. Well, hello, for the majority of the independent wrestlers, that just does not happen. I don't care who you are, it just does not happen. And if somebody's claimed that he wrestled 200 matches, it's even a bigger lie. So, I mean, you're talking about a lot of crazy stuff. Anyway, that's basically my take on Ronda and Roman. Roman's a good idea, but it ain't going to get over like John Cena. Ronda is basically going to be fighting a political battle once it all gets to going. And the WWE is going to be relying on Ronda to bring them back up. And that's just basically what it comes down to. And we're coming up on the final 3 minutes of the close of the show. And I've done interviews before, but it sort of feels nice being the anchor for once, because then I don't have to, like, one guy told me that I had 10 minutes to talk, and he asked me one of the hardest questions there is in this business about people stealing moves. Well, hello, that's been done since Gorgeous George. That's a stupid question to ask, and I don't agree with that kind of verbiage, especially coming from somebody who has never laced up the boots. I just don't like it. I know. But that's just the way it is, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Anyway, the name Texas Torque Ridge got thrown on me by Bill Mulkey. What got me over with Bill Mulkey was I was possibly the only guy in that locker room that knew how to do a Oklahoma roll. And that's a simple, well, now it's a false finish. That's a filler move that a lot of people use. Well, some people use as a filler move, but that got me in with him, and I've never been afraid to wrestle anybody, anytime, anywhere. Nowadays, it takes a little bit more to get me to do it as far as money-wise. I just won't show up anywhere anymore, and I'm not going to do all the sucking up to get booked anymore, just because the industry's possibly on its last downfall at the top. So it may have another 20 years left. Unless, if Dana White gets caught in some illegal action himself, like Vince got caught in, on a bigger deal, bigger stage, I guess you could say, almost like the steroid allegation where the feds get called in, wrestling has a big chance then. And all these YouTube videos are not working for Dana right now about UFC being fixed. You know, every old timer in the business says UFC is basically pro wrestling in the 60s and 70s, which I agree, and that is a true statement, and I'm plagiarizing them too. So that's what it basically comes down to. And you know, there's just a lot that has to be learned as far as the business, and wrestling business needs more mainstream involvement, but they don't need it at the David Arquette level, because that's turning the wrestling business into a joke. It almost needs to come across like Jerry Lawler and Andy Kaufman. That will keep the wrestling business alive as long as it stays like that. And anyway, I'm down to my last 30 seconds of the show. I'd like to thank all of you that's going to listen, and I'm getting ready to promote the living hell out of this like the only way I can, and be a thorn in Vince's and Dana White's side, because that's the kind of hill I am. So thank you.